What's up, y'all? Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and more ghost faces. I'm Noah Hook, and today I'll be sharing my first thoughts on Scream 6. The newest entry in the Scream franchise follows Sam, Tara, Mindy, and Chad as they leave Woodsboro behind for a fresh start in New York City. However, they soon find themselves in a fight for their lives when a new killer embarks on a bloody rampage. So the first half of this video is going to be spoiler free. I'm going to give you my general feelings and reactions to the film, but I won't be going into detail about the plot or characters or anything like that. That being said, there may be some little nuggets of information here and there that you consider spoilers, so if you don't want any, you should probably just wait and watch the movie first and then come back to this video to be safe. The second half of this video will be going straight into the nitty-gritty spoilers, but I'll be sure to make it clear when we're making that shift. Another disclaimer is that I might be just a little bit biased in this review. Since I was able to watch Scream 6 at an Alamo Draft House here in Chicago, and it proved to be a very fun theater experience. They've got solid cocktails, snacks, and whole-ass meals, big comfy chairs to sit in, and it was just a great way to watch a horror movie. You could have thrown a terrible movie at me and I still would have had a great time. I highly recommend an Alamo Draft House if you have one near you. But with all of that said, it's probably time we get started.
Let's play a game.
You know you're like the 10th guy to try this, right?
Generally, I had a really good time with Scream 6, and so far it's my favorite horror movie of 2023. That isn't really saying much considering what we've gotten this year so far, but I still think it's going to remain pretty high on my list. The returning cast members all did a great job. I felt that each member of the core four got some meaningful character development during the film. And as you should probably know, this is the return of Kirby, and I think both she and Gale had some meaningful development as well. I also enjoyed all of the new characters that were introduced, and I really liked the opening kill sequence to this one. It took me for a loop. For now, when I'm talking about Ghostface, I'm simply going to say the killer for simplicity's sake. There might be one killer, there might be two, there might be a dozen. You're gonna have to go watch the film and find out, but just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to refer to Ghostface as one entity. But what really makes this Scream stand out is this new Ghostface. This time around, the killer is big, strong, and knows how to fuck shit up, and they seriously have a menacing presence whenever they're on screen. Outside of the Ghostface portrayed by Billy and Stu in the original, this might just be my favorite Ghostface of all time. That same sentiment does not necessarily apply to the person behind the mask, as the killer reveal had some strong and weak points. It was partially very predictable, but also surprising in a few ways as well. The killer's motivations were a mixed bag for me as well, but I'm not going to get into that here. That will happen in the spoiler section. I'd say the final act was really solid, although the stakes felt a bit low for me. Like, it seemed really unlikely that certain characters that were still around were going to die by that point. That really applies to every Scream film, but it was very apparent here. But outside of that finale, which again was still solid, I'd say this is probably the scariest and most tense Scream we've ever gotten. There were just a bunch of really great setups and set pieces for different chase and kill sequences, and it flowed really well for me. I think the film utilizes New York really well with a few of those set pieces, but it is this new setting that also is a bit of a problem for me. Each movie has just been getting more and more brazen with how much shit Ghostface can get away with without getting caught. Screams 4 and 5 had ridiculously empty hospitals in their finales, along with a ton of other unrealistic escapes all throughout this franchise, and Scream 6 definitely continues that path. You kind of just have to accept that Ghostface is gonna disappear into the busy New York crowds after stabbing somebody to death. Surveillance cameras literally everywhere that the police could use to track the killer's movement. Nah, fuck that, that's boring. What does this look like, Manhunter? Reality went out the window in the second movie. But like I said from the start, I really enjoyed Scream 6, and these issues were small and didn't really detract from my overall enjoyment of the film. It had a lot of really funny humor, a lot of changing settings to keep safety questionable, some of the best chase, fight, and kill sequences in the entire franchise, some really emotional moments between characters, a ton of great Easter eggs and homages, and some fun meta moments between Ghostface's shenanigans and Mindy's explanation that we fully entered franchise territory. At the moment, I'd put it somewhere in the middle of the pack when it comes to ranking the Scream franchise, but that could totally change with a rewatch. And it should probably go without saying, if you're not a big fan of the Scream franchise already, you're probably not gonna like this one. A Scream movie in New York is still a Scream movie. You shouldn't go in expecting something wildly different. But I'd say give it a shot, and I'd say give it a shot in theaters if you have the opportunity. And once you do that, come back and watch the spoiler section of this review, which is starting now.
You want me, so let's finish this.
Alright, if you're still here, I assume you've watched the movie. So, how many of you were able to guess who the killers were? I definitely had Wayne pegged as the killer early on, as there was just nobody else in the cast who could prove to be such a physical threat. Although there was a very big part of me that was hoping this would be the return of Stu Macher, but a little bit more on that in a sec. But yeah, the pairing of being a big dude and a cop with so many resources available made him a pretty prime candidate to be the killer, but I was a bit less sure about his kids. Historically, there has always been a white boy as part of the Scream crew, so I assumed Mindy's hunch about Ethan was correct. But Quinn's fake-out death was a surprise to me. I was suspicious of her early on, but I truly believed she was dead when we saw her die. It makes sense now that I look back at it, as I was definitely wondering how she didn't notice her boyfriend got chopped up into a bunch of little pieces. The answer is it was probably her that did it. Their eventual reveal of being Richie's family was a decent enough motive, and it made sense now that I think about it being a sort of reboot of Scream 2, where Sydney goes to college and gets attacked by Billy's mom. I think all three actors brought a great mix of zaniness and intensity to the Bailey family, and generally I think this push towards more sadistic psychopaths is working well for the franchise. I also really liked the inclusion of Richie's little film club followers in the opening. It added some complexity to the whodunit, so I wasn't quite sure where it was going. But I do think that Wayne's profession allowed the writers to get just a little bit lazy. Oh, I'm a cop so I can switch out bodies at crime scenes, steal hundreds of pieces of evidence from a humongous string of very important crimes, and prevent even the fucking FBI from catching on. I don't think so. I thought Richie's shrine to Ghostface was a really cool setting, but being that he died in the last movie, it's also a bit disappointing that it's his. It makes sense that it belonged to a deranged superfan, but with all the harkening back to the original films, I really expected it to be somebody tied to that. Which I know would be weird because Gale is the only OG left on screen, so it makes sense to keep the villains in this new line of violence. But am I the only one who thinks Stu Macher is returning for Scream 7? Between Mindy's comment about not believing he's dead and the fact they crushed Ethan's head with that same TV, I just think we're gonna have some Matthew Lillard in our futures. It might be way too predictable, but I wouldn't give a fuck. I'd be very happy for this convoluted return of a character. Otherwise, I have no real idea where the story would go next unless Amber's family wants revenge or Richie's extended cousins. Although there was a little nugget of promise with the little film bros at the beginning, like the idea that a bunch of ghost faces start popping up everywhere could be cool, but I don't know how they would really execute that for a movie. But I just think seeing Billy's daughter go up against or maybe team up with Stu would be a really interesting way for the story to end or at least continue. Okay, but let me get back to the movie that actually exists as I still have things to talk about. My only real complaint about Scream 6 is the lack of victims. There was a lot of stabbing, slashing, and shooting throughout, but by the end, the writers didn't pull the trigger for good on anybody of consequence. Gale survives, Mindy survives, Chad survives, despite all of them receiving injuries that should probably have killed them. Especially Chad. The only genuine victims are Laura in the opening kill, Annika in one of the franchise's most unique kills, that shitty therapist who was really of no importance, and 2 fucking random dudes in a bodega. Aside from them, everyone else who died was a ghost face. Oh wow, that's crazy. I think as many ghost faces died as actual victims. My math could be off, I'm probably forgetting somebody, but that's interesting if that's the case. But Chad's survival is only annoying because he was so violently and methodically attacked, but I am glad that his relationship with Tara is going to get to grow in the next film. I'm also mixed on Gale's survival. I don't necessarily think she needed to die, but I'm just not sure what her survival means for the larger story to come. I guess we'll see. But it ultimately means that Scream 6 has few long-lasting repercussions on the survivors, aside from a little bit of extra therapy and scar tissue. But I did like that the film had a heavy focus on the psychological toll that the last film had on them. This was also something that was explored in Scream 2, but I think this was a much more successful and diverse look at how people cope with trauma. I'm very interested to see what's in the next chapter for Sam, as she has simultaneously gotten even more accustomed to murder while seemingly leaving behind the spirit of Billy. I'm also very curious to see where the story goes next. Will we stay in New York? Will we return to Woodsboro? Will we go somewhere new? The options are open. Just no Ghostface in space, please. But overall, I think Scream 6 was a successful continuation of the franchise, managing to mix in nostalgia while adding a lot of new life into the series as well. Well, that's about it. What did y'all think of Scream 6, and what do you think they're planning for Scream 7? Let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know what y'all think of this shortened review kind of format. I really enjoy the longer reviews where I break down the film and go through the footage and everything, but this could be a way for me to do more reviews and have them be simpler. I think going through the plot is a lot of fun, but yeah, let me know what you think down below. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope you tune in next week when we check out Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Thank you all so much for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my initial thoughts on Scream 6. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks, y'all.